You know, the moment you choose yourself, truly choose yourself, the world starts whispering, she's changed. He's not the same anymore. They think they're better now. No, darling, you didn't change. You evolved. You grew up. You woke up. And yes, they are mad, not because you failed, not because you lost, but because you had the audacity to move on. They expected you to stay small, stay broken, stay doubting. They expected your silence to become your signature. But instead, you rose. When you begin to grow, to evolve, to change in ways that elevate your life, it won't go unnoticed. And not always in the way you expect. Growth is beautiful, but it's also threatening to people who have stayed in the same place. The truth is, your growth will trigger discomfort, not just in you, but in them. People often romanticize the idea of becoming better. They say, I'm so proud of you, and look at you thriving. But only until that growth starts to shine a light on their stagnation, then it becomes a problem. Your progress becomes a mirror they didn't ask for, reflecting back all the decisions they didn't make, all the chances they didn't take, and all the patterns they refused to break. You see, people liked you when you were uncertain, when you were second-guessing yourself, when you kept quiet and stayed small. That version of you was easy to manage, easy to label, easy to control. But now you're walking with your head high. You're saying no without guilt. You're making choices rooted in self-respect rather than approval. And that shakes things up because you've shifted, and anytime you shift, the dynamics around you begin to rearrange. You're not operating from the same emotional place anymore. You're not picking up the phone every time drama calls. You're not explaining your worth to people who never took the time to understand it. That bothers them. Not because you did anything wrong, but because they haven't moved forward themselves. This is where the whispers start. She's changed. He thinks he's too good now. No. You haven't become arrogant. You've become aware. There's a difference. Arrogance is loud and insecure. Awareness is quiet and grounded. And when you're grounded, you don't chase validation anymore. You don't perform to be liked. You simply live. And that bothers people who are still caught in cycles of needing to be seen. Growth makes people uncomfortable because it challenges their comfort zones. Maybe you used to sit around and complain with them. Maybe you used to bond over misery or toxic patterns or small dreams. But now you've outgrown that. You're talking about healing, building, creating. And that's a different language, one not everyone wants to learn. They're mad because you moved on. And they didn't. They're still repeating the same excuses, still blaming the world, still trying to get somewhere without taking the steps. Even when they were messy, even when they were painful, even when you had no one cheering for you, you kept going. You leveled up. That's why the energy shifted. Not because you became cold or distant, but because you became focused. You started to realize that not everyone can go with you to the next level. Some people are part of your history, not your destiny. And cutting ties with that history is not cruelty. It's clarity. It's choosing to protect your peace, even if it means disappointing others. Here's the thing. Your life is not meant to be a museum for other people's comfort. You are not here to stay the same for the sake of familiarity. You are here to evolve, to shed, to rise. And rising will always be misunderstood by those who are committed to staying grounded in the past. So yes, they are mad, but it has nothing to do with you. The reaction is not your responsibility. Your only responsibility is to keep moving in the direction of your truth. Keep showing up for yourself. Keep becoming. Keep creating space where you can breathe and expand. And let the whispers be background noise to your growth. Because the ones who are truly for you, they'll clap when you climb. They won't compete. They'll celebrate. They won't guilt trip you for growing. They'll grow with you. In the end, your evolution will cost you some people, but it will never cost you your peace. And that is a price worth paying every single time. Choosing yourself is one of the most powerful, revolutionary acts you will ever do in your life. It's not loud, it's not showy, and it often doesn't come with applause. But it's a shift so profound that once you do it, there's no going back. It's the moment you stop asking the world for permission to exist fully. The moment you stop bending, shrinking, and apologizing just to make other people comfortable. That moment changes everything. You see, for a long time, many of us are trained to believe that selflessness means self-sacrifice. That being liked is more important than being real. That keeping the peace means staying silent even when your soul is screaming for more. But there comes a day when something inside you snaps, not in anger, but in clarity. You wake up and realize you've been living a version of yourself filtered through everyone else's expectations. And you're tired. Tired of explaining yourself. Tired of being who they want you to be. Tired of carrying guilt for wanting something better. That's the day you choose yourself, not in a selfish way, but in a sacred way. You finally understand that choosing yourself doesn't mean rejecting others. It means no longer rejecting you. That kind of choice is revolutionary because it disrupts patterns. It disrupts roles you've been stuck in. The caretaker, the fixer, the people pleaser, the one who never says no. Suddenly, you're setting boundaries. You're walking away from what no longer serves you. You're protecting your time, your energy, your heart. And that shift, that scares people. Especially the ones who were benefiting from your lack of boundaries. Because when you choose yourself, you stop being predictable. You stop being easy to manipulate. You stop saying yes just to keep the peace and start saying no because you finally realize your peace matters too. And that's not something everyone is ready to accept. Some people will call it selfish. They'll call you distant, cold, different. And they'll be right. You are different. Because when you choose yourself, you stop chasing validation, you stop hustling for your worth, you stop molding yourself to fit into boxes that were never built for you in the first place. You start standing in your truth, even if your voice shakes. You start embracing your power, even if others find it intimidating. Choosing yourself means trusting your intuition over their opinions. It means making peace with disappointing others if it means staying loyal to your own heart. It means no longer settling for less just to make others feel more. That kind of inner rebellion is quiet, but it's loud in its impact. It changes the way you show up in relationships, in conversations, in rooms, in the world. And yes, not everyone will clap for you. Some will try to guilt you back into the box they were comfortable keeping you in. They'll bring up the past. They'll call you difficult. They'll say you've changed, as if that's a bad thing. But growth is change, healing is change, becoming who you were always meant to be is change. And if they can't handle that, let them walk. Because here's the truth. The people who genuinely love you, who truly want to see you whole, they won't be threatened by your healing. They won't be mad that you chose yourself. They'll cheer you on. They'll grow with you. And the ones who don't, they were only ever attached to the version of you that stayed small. Choosing yourself isn't about ego, it's about alignment. It's about recognizing that you cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot serve others well if you're constantly abandoning yourself. You cannot keep shrinking and expect to feel fulfilled. Life isn't meant to be lived in the shadows of everyone else's needs. You deserve to take up space. You deserve to be whole. You deserve to be free. So if today is the day you choose yourself, do it boldly. Do it quietly if you must, but do it unapologetically. You don't owe anyone an explanation for evolving. You don't owe anyone your exhaustion. What you owe is to your soul, to honor it, to protect it, to listen to it. Because once you choose yourself, you don't just shift your own life, you inspire others to do the same. And that's how real change begins. The truth is, not everyone is going to celebrate your healing. In fact, some will be offended by it. Not because you've done something wrong, but because your healing forces them to confront their own wounds, the ones they've been ignoring, suppressing, or denying for years. And that's uncomfortable. Your progress, your growth, your light, it challenges the parts of them still living in darkness. So instead of applauding your transformation, they criticize it, they question it, they distance themselves from it. That's the irony of healing. It's a deeply personal journey, but it doesn't happen in isolation. The moment you begin to change, everything around you starts to shift. Relationships, routines, conversations, even your silence. It all starts to mean something different. You become more aware of the energy you allow into your life. You recognize the manipulation hidden in jokes. You sense the envy behind the compliments. You feel the tension in rooms where you used to feel invisible. And suddenly you see it. How much of your identity was built around pain, around being needed, around being agreeable, around being small enough not to make anyone else uncomfortable. But healing doesn't allow that. Healing is messy. It's bold, it's raw, it demands honesty and courage and boundaries. And once you start choosing those things, you naturally stop choosing people who benefit from your brokenness. Some people loved you most when you didn't love yourself. Not because they were evil, but because your wounds made their insecurities feel smaller. When you were struggling, they felt strong. When you were doubting yourself, they felt wise. When you were quiet, they felt heard. But now you've found your voice. Now you're saying, I deserve more. Now you're walking away from situations that once defined you. And to those who built their worth on your weakness, that's threatening. They say you've changed. They say you think you're better than us now. But healing isn't arrogance. It's alignment. You didn't choose healing to become superior. You chose it to become whole, to live without constantly bleeding from unseen wounds, to stop apologizing for scars you didn't ask for. You chose healing so you could breathe again, love again, trust yourself again. But because your healing makes others uncomfortable, they may try to invalidate it. They'll remind you of who you were. They'll throw your past in your face. They'll act like your growth is a phase, like you're pretending, like you're lost. But that's their projection, not your truth. People who are truly healed won't shame you for healing. They'll understand it. They'll honor it because they know what it takes to look at your own reflection and not look away. You might lose people during this process. That's a painful part of healing no one talks about enough. The grief of letting go. The loneliness of choosing peace over approval. But that loss is not the end. It's the clearing. It's the space being made for relationships built on truth, not trauma. On connection, not codependence. On love, not loyalty to your wounds. The more you heal, the more you realize you don't need to be surrounded by a crowd. You just need to be surrounded by truth. You need people who won't punish you for growing, who won't guilt trip you for choosing rest, who won't make your healing about them. These are the people who will walk with you not because they want to fix you, but because they believe in your freedom. And most importantly, your healing doesn't need to be loud to be real. You don't have to prove it. You don't have to explain it. Healing is not performance, it's presence. It's in how you speak to yourself when you make a mistake. It's in how you no longer chase the love that once broke you. It's in how you choose yourself without shame. That is healing, quiet, powerful, unapologetic. So let them be offended, let them be confused, let them fall away if that's what must happen. Because your healing is not for their comfort. It's for your freedom. And you deserve to be free, even if it means walking away from everything that once felt familiar. You're not who you used to be. And that's the most beautiful proof that healing is happening. Keep going. Keep choosing you. They might not understand, but your soul does. And that's all that matters. You don't need anyone's permission to grow. You don't need a round of applause to heal. You don't need a vote from the crowd to become who you're meant to be. The most liberating truth you'll ever embrace is this. Your freedom doesn't require their understanding, and your progress doesn't need their validation. You were never meant to fit into the mold they created for you. And the moment you stop trying is the moment everything begins to change. We spend so much of our lives looking outward for approval. We ask, is this okay? Before we make decisions that are best for us. We seek signs, confirmations, and green lights from people who may not even know who they are, let alone what's right for us. But the most powerful thing you can do is listen to your own inner voice, the one that's been whispering all along, this isn't it, or there's more for you. And when you finally listen, when you finally move in the direction of your truth, it's like waking up from a long sleep. You begin to see that so much of your life was shaped by expectations that were never yours. The career they thought you should pursue, the relationship they said was good enough, the way you were told to act, dress, speak, believe, all of it shaped by someone else's comfort, not your conviction. But the truth is, you don't owe them your silence. You don't owe them your stillness. And you don't owe them the version of you that makes them feel safe while you feel suffocated. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to rewrite your story, even if they don't like the new plot. And yes, they will have opinions. They always do. They'll say you're different, as if that's a sin. They'll say you've become distant, when really you've just become aligned. They'll say you think you're better than them, when all you've done is realize you're worthy of better. But their discomfort isn't your burden. You're not responsible for how others feel about the peace you choose for yourself. You are not here to shrink into spaces that no longer fit you. You're here to outgrow, to shed, to rise. And rising is not a group project. It's a solo decision. A bold, quiet revolution within your spirit. It's looking around at the noise, the pressure, the expectations, and saying, no more. Not because you're angry, but because you're done abandoning yourself. You don't need their permission to heal, to rest, to start over, to fall in love with life again. You don't need them to clap for you when you win or agree with you when you choose differently. That's the power of freedom. It's internal. It's not something given, it's something claimed. And once you claim it, something amazing happens. You stop over-explaining. You stop seeking closure from people who never gave you clarity to begin with. You stop hoping they'll finally see your side. You simply walk forward steadily, gracefully, and in that walk, in that movement, you become unstoppable. Not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you're finally living for something real. Your peace, your joy, your purpose. You were never too much. You were just surrounded by people who wanted you to be less. You were never lost. You were simply taught to follow paths that didn't lead to yourself. But now you've returned. And this version of you, the one who chooses truth over tradition, alignment over approval, authenticity over applause, that version of you is powerful beyond measure. So let them wonder, let them gossip, let them misunderstand. That's not your concern anymore. You didn't come here to play small. You came here to live fully, to love deeply, to speak boldly, to move freely. And none of that requires their permission. You owe it to yourself to keep growing, even if it means growing away from people who once mattered. That's not betrayal, it's evolution. And not everyone is meant to come with you. This is your life, your chapter, your healing, your rise. And you don't need a single soul to co-sign your journey. The only yes that matters is yours. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's in the quiet decision to walk away, to pack your peace and leave places, people, and patterns that no longer serve you. The most powerful moment in your life won't be when you're standing in front of a crowd, receiving applause. It'll be when you're alone in your room, looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I deserve more than this. That's the moment everything changes. That's the moment your life begins to shift, not because someone gave you permission, but because you gave it to yourself. There is immense power in moving on, in choosing to take your energy back, in deciding you're no longer going to water dead plants or try to be enough for people who never really saw you. That power doesn't come from bitterness. It comes from clarity, from healing, from growth. It comes from being tired, not just physically but spiritually, of fighting for spaces that were never meant for you in the first place. You start realizing the difference between staying loyal to others and staying loyal to yourself. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away, not out of anger but out of self-respect. There's nothing more powerful than a person who chooses peace over chaos, healing over harm, and authenticity over approval. Because that person is no longer waiting to be chosen. That person has chosen themselves. When you begin to move differently, not everyone will understand. Some will say you're being cold, distant, or dramatic. But what they're really saying is, I don't like that you're no longer easy to control. People who were used to you compromising your needs will be confused when you finally stop. People who benefited from your silence will call you difficult when you begin to speak. But their confusion is not your problem. It's just proof that you've changed. You see, real power doesn't demand attention. It simply moves. It exits quietly from the wrong rooms and walks boldly into the right ones. It stops explaining itself to people committed to misunderstanding it. It no longer seeks validation because it's already anchored in truth. That's what makes it so unstoppable. That's what makes it sacred. Choosing to move on doesn't mean you're heartless. It means you're done pouring your love, time, and energy into people and places that do not reciprocate. It means you've learned that love is not meant to be begged for. That peace isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. That staying in a cycle that drains you is far more dangerous than stepping into the unknown. And yes, the unknown is scary. Walking away doesn't mean you have everything figured out. It just means you're brave enough to no longer stay where your soul is shrinking. You don't need all the answers to take the first step. You just need enough faith in yourself to trust that you're worth the leap, That your life isn't supposed to be about surviving, it's supposed to be about thriving. The most powerful moves are the ones no one sees coming. The decision to stop arguing, to stop begging, to stop showing up for people who never showed up for you. The power is in the silence, in the boundaries, in the moments when you stop performing and start existing for real. And when you do that, when you start choosing yourself, honoring yourself, and loving yourself, that's when the magic begins. Because now, you're not just moving on, you're moving up. You're leveling into a version of yourself that doesn't chase, but attracts. That doesn't force, but flows. That doesn't shrink, but expands. And yes, it will cost you something. Old versions of you, old relationships, old patterns. But what you gain is freedom, and nothing is more powerful than a person who is free. So let the world watch in confusion. Let them question your silence. Let them misread your peace. You don't owe them understanding. You owe yourself a life that feels like home. A life where you don't have to fight for respect, for love, for space. You simply are, and that is enough. The move isn't just about leaving, it's about becoming. And that becoming, that's your power. Quiet, solid, undeniable. Keep moving, keep rising. Let the power in your steps speak for itself. Sometimes the loudest reaction you'll ever get is silence. The moment you stop showing up the way they expect, the moment you start honoring yourself, setting boundaries and making choices that serve your peace, you notice a shift. Some people will pull back, others will gossip, a few might confront you, but many will go quiet, not because they're indifferent, but because your growth makes them uncomfortable. And that silence, that's the sound of you no longer being controllable. When people can't manipulate you anymore, when they can't count on your people-pleasing, when your yes is no longer automatic, they get mad. They won't always say it outright. Sometimes it's in passive-aggressive comments, in the cold shoulder, in the group chats you're suddenly not part of anymore. And that's fine, because you weren't created to live in the shadows of anyone's approval. You were made to be whole, to be free, and freedom comes with a price. Not everyone is going to walk with you. The truth is, some people liked the old version of you better, not because that version was more lovable, but because it was more manageable. You didn't ask for much. You stayed quiet. You were available on their terms, even if it cost you your well-being. But then something changed. You started healing. You started saying no. You started pulling your energy back and reinvesting it in yourself. And that's when the friction began. They don't miss you. They miss your compliance. They miss the version of you who tolerated too much, who laughed off disrespect, who dimmed your light so others could shine. But that version of you is gone. And what replaced it is someone who knows their worth. Someone who no longer entertains chaos in the name of loyalty. Someone who values peace over proximity. And you know what's wild? You're not even being mean. You're not burning bridges. You're not starting drama. You're just different, more centered, less reactive, more intentional with your time and energy. You don't chase. You don't beg. You don't over-explain. You simply exist in a state of quiet power. And that threatens people who are comfortable with your confusion. They'll call you distant, they'll say you've changed. And you have. You've grown into someone who finally listens to their own voice over the noise of other people's expectations. You've learned that protecting your peace sometimes means disappointing others, that you don't need to argue to be understood, and you don't need to stay to prove a point. Your life is no longer about proving. It's about living. People will project their own insecurities onto your growth. They'll say, "You're too much now when you were just easy before." But your healing is not for their comfort, it's for your wholeness. And if your boundaries offend them, they were never truly respecting you to begin with. Growth doesn't destroy real relationships, it reveals them. You'll notice who celebrates your wins and who falls silent. You'll notice who encourages your rest and who only values you when you're producing. You'll notice who claps when you rise and who subtly tries to pull you back into who you used to be. Pay attention. Silence speaks louder than words, and energy never lies. But let that be your clarity, not your confusion. Don't shrink back into your old self just to be accepted. Don't dull your shine to make others feel more secure. You're not responsible for their comfort. You're responsible for your alignment, for your growth, for your freedom. There will be times when you second guess yourself, when you feel the weight of being misunderstood. But let me remind you, you're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be true to yourself. And if that truth makes others uncomfortable, so be it. You're not obligated to carry the weight of their unhealed pain. Keep moving, keep growing, let your silence speak, let your presence shift rooms. Let your boundaries teach people how to treat you. You don't need to announce your transformation, you just need to live it. Because the people who are meant for you, they won't be mad that you've moved on. They'll be inspired. They'll rise with you. They'll cheer for your evolution, not resent it. And that's how you'll know who's really for you. Not by what they say, but by how they show up when you finally start showing up for yourself.